us online each week. We're glad you're with us and wish you could be with us and can be here. We are each week together and learning as much as we can. That's why we're here. And we've been working in the book of Psalms. We're halfway through our summer. And so we're halfway through this session. We're in session 8 out of 13. So we've made our way through about half now. We would need a whole year to do all the Psalms. There's so many. But just picking and choosing some as we go through these 3 months. And they've been really good. A lot of them have the similar meanings and messages. And a lot of them say a lot of the same things. But they come at it from different aspects. Many of these Psalms, which means a song in the Bible, were written by David. And there's some indication that the one we'll study today was written by him as well. We're going to be looking at the 105th Psalm. So we won't read the whole thing. I'm actually going to look at parts that are not mentioned in our study book. But a lot of these Psalms were written as a celebration and remembrance and ways to praise and sing. It's much like we have our songs in our church services now. And they're just ways for us to celebrate God and what He's done and who He is. And this one's really no different from that, other than it's got a particular focus on being faithful. The person I was studying behind this week made a lot of reference to how songs in our churches today do a lot of study into how God is faithful. And that worked well with our lesson today because we're talking about God's faithfulness. And the song he first referenced was "Great is Thy Faithfulness." So, younger people may not know that song as well as older ones, but that song talks about how God is grateful and that each morning there's a new thing for us to see, a way in which God has been faithful to us. And you know, God is faithful to us in ways that we don't even recognize. Maybe something that happens in our life that we knew nothing about, but that God took care of for us just because we're His. And you've probably been in a situation where you say, well, that worked out pretty well. I didn't even pray for that. I wasn't even looking for that. It's just a blessing that came upon me out of nowhere. And I think that's the indication that God is so faithful to us that He takes care of His own. That have you ever done something that maybe I just thought of this, because it happened this week. You done something and you did something particular for one of your children, and when you do it, they got this eyes like, really? We're going to do that, or I get one of those, or whatever surprise to them, something they didn't expect, and you see their face. Well, that's the same face or feeling that I have when I run upon one of those situations where I said, God just took care of that. I don't really remember praying for that or asking for that blessing. He's just faithful. And so these Psalms kind of work that way in a lot of instances. But what better thing for us to have out of a friend or a parent or spouse or a loved one, family member of any kind, a fellow church member, a Christian, a neighbor, than to know that they'll do what they say they're going to do. That's one of the best indications to me that a friend of mine is a good friend, is the one they say, hey, I can help you and I'll be there Friday at 3 o'clock. And Friday at 3 o'clock, here they are. I know that I can trust that person, that I have faith in them. You all had faith in those seats you were sitting in today. You just came in and said that you didn't even question it. You just sat right down. Well, that's the kind of faith that David is writing here about that we can have in God. He is so great, and he is so deserving of praise because of it, of his faithfulness to us. So since he is faithful, he deserves worship. He deserves praise. He deserves thanks. He deserves gratitude. He'll never fail us. And so we should be filled with gratitude. At the end of our lesson, I'm going to point out a cycle that's kind of become evident to me through studying the Bible as long as I have, through my short years that I just see over and over, a pattern, and I've mentioned a time or two before, and we'll get to it. You probably already know it. But anyway, we start out with the 105th Psalm, and we're going to read a portion of it, verses 1 through 11, then we'll jump all the way down to verse 42. But I will reference a few things in between, just so we don't leave a lot of it out. So let's start reading in verse 1. Give thanks to the Lord, call on his name, proclaim his deeds among the peoples, and sing to him, sing praise to him, tell about his wondrous works. You're probably already hearing songs that you know. Praise him, tell of his wonderful greatness. There it is. And so you see the next line, boast in his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Look at the praise that David is writing in the very, very beginning of the song. This was probably, as I learned this week, a song that was written for the people to sing as the Ark of the Covenant was being brought back to be with the Israelites, as David wanted it back with the people. And this was one of the songs that they would have sung because of the great and wondrous faithfulness that God has delivered to them in just sticking with them through all these things that they've been through. But the first portion of this is just calling them to worship. Look at some of the words again. Give thanks to the Lord. He's just saying, just praise God for what's going on here. Yes, we should give thanks to the Lord. Call on his name and proclaim his deeds. For any Christian, that should be one of the easiest things that we do. We just look at any portion of our life, anything that happens somewhere during the week, look at our family, our health, our possessions, our blessings, our church, just the things that we live each day, and have some way to just stop and do those three things. Give thanks, call on his name, proclaim his deeds. It's just so easy to say, well, I thank you, God, for what I have and what you've done. You are my God, and I'm going to tell somebody about you. And then it says, sing to him, sing praise to him, tell about all his wondrous works. So he is pointing out that people that experience God's faithfulness are expected to share this faithfulness with others. One of the best things that we can do as a Christian, we don't have to teach a Bible study to somebody. We don't have to preach to them. We just tell them what God's done for us. One of the best testimonies that I can have is just if I meet somebody and I'm getting to know them in that first 20 or 30 minutes, I'm talking to them, sharing whatever. I get to know them, they get to know me, and somewhere in that conversation you say, you know what, I'll just tell you this. In my life, God's a big deal. Let me tell you what he's done. He's blessed me with this, this, and this. I was saved and so and so. And talk about how good your life is compared to other things. There's a young guy that I talk to every now and then now about this very thing. And his life, I've seen it progress over the last 2 years or so as he is making decisions to better his life. The first one being he got saved, and then after that, you'd see the decisions in his life and watching his lifestyle change. And it's just because when we talk about something, he'll ask the question, well, for me, this, and this, and I learned that lesson, and God helped me learn it. And it's got his mind rolling, and the next thing you know, he's starting to change his life just from me talking about mine. I didn't do anything incredible other than just say to him what God is for me and how it's helped. And so there's the same thing. Tell about his wondrous works and boast in his holy name. You know, it's not right to boast or brag. We tell our kids, don't brag. No, you just be humble. Stay humble. Even to myself, I said, Lord, keep me humble. Even if I'm doing good, just keep me humble. Let me know I'm grounded. I'm not all that. I'm nothing without you. But when it comes to Jesus Christ, we can brag all we want to. We brag on God. We're supposed to do that. We're supposed to tell everybody he's the best thing ever. And so it says, boast in his holy name, and let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. So just to tell somebody is just to tell openly about what God has done for us and to witness for God and to tell others. And we're supposed to boast about him. And it says we're supposed to sing about him. And it says that verse 4, seek the Lord and his strength. So as we're proclaiming and worshiping God through song, that we're supposed to, in verse 4, seek for him and look for his strength. Seek the Lord in his strength, seek his face always. Do we seek the Lord? That's a good question for us. I know Him. I read my Bible every day, and I pray, but am I looking for Him wherever I'm at? You know, if I'm at work, am I seeking God? If I'm riding on the road, am I seeking God? If I'm doing errands, working in the yard, whatever it is, are we looking for Him? I saw a little video reel this week, and it said if God is just something you do on Sunday, He's just a hobby. You might as well be fishing. But if he's really your life, He'll be in every day to the week. So are we seeking the Lord, or is He just a little something on the side? So He says, seek His face always. And then He says, remember the wondrous works He has done, His wonders and the judgments He has pronounced. You offspring of Abraham, His servant, Jacob's descendants, His chosen ones. And I think David slips that in there to prepare them for what's coming next. Because if you read that verse again, let's start with verse 5 again. Remember the wondrous works He has done. He's setting up. I want you to think in the past now. Remember, and now I guess it can apply to us just as well as it's going to apply to the people He's writing this song to. Remember the wondrous works He's done, His wonders, and the judgments He's pronounced. And then He goes for it. You offspring of Abraham, His servant. Now He's going straight to the Israelites and their past, their ancestors, and saying, you are about to be given information to make you remember where you came from. And so He goes straight into Abraham and Jacob, and He starts mentioning it, and then He lists His chosen ones. He marks out His chosen ones. Now they know exactly who He is speaking to. He is talking about the Israelite nation. Because when Abraham received the covenant from God to say, I will choose you, and I'm going to make a huge nation from you. I'm going to start with you. And He made a promise to Abraham. That's the chosen ones. And He says there, you remember the wondrous works. Now, so we jump to verse 7. That's when He starts into this. He is the Lord our God. His judgments govern the whole earth. He remembers His covenant forever. And there comes that word, covenant. The covenant that He's talking about is the one that He made with Abraham. The one He made with those Israelites. Remember when they left, and Abraham's traveling, and He makes a covenant with him. And then later there's another one when they leave Egypt. And there's another one there with Moses, and they make another covenant. And these covenants, one by one, are meant to bond Him and His people together. There's a word that we mentioned last year, and I can't remember, and I had to go back and look it up because I can't say it correctly, but it's called hesed in the Greek, sorry. But it means a covenant between God and man, but it's not like the covenant I'll have, with one of you guys. You're my friend, or I sign a contract to buy a car, or even marriage to my wife. It's different. The covenant with a man and God is so deep, it's stronger than any other covenant that exists, because I'm making a covenant with the one that created me. And I'm saying to Him, you are the one that created me. I acknowledge it, and I honor and praise you. And in return, you have promised to give me everything I need as I need it, as you see fit. And I trust you with all of it. Now, what's that remind you of? A parent and a child. That's the first thing I think of, is a parent and a child. What's a child do by nature? They cling to their parent. A baby, well, we're watching it now with Nora. A baby wants one or two people, mom and daddy. Usually it's mama first, because she's the one who birthed that baby. But if there's two people on the planet that they want the most, it's mom and daddy, because that's the safe place. That's the place where they feel the most at peace. They know it's home, and they know that mom and dad are the ones that will stick with them no matter what. Okay, so this same covenant is the one that God made with Abraham. You be all mine, and I'll be all yours. So He points this out in verse 7. He is the Lord our God. His judgments govern the whole earth. He remembers His covenant forever. So when God makes a covenant with us, it's not temporary. It's forever, it says. He will never forget it. The promise he ordained for 1,000 generations, that's the one he made with Abraham. The covenant he made with Abraham, swore to Isaac, and confirmed to Jacob as a decree, and to Israel as a permanent covenant. I will give the land of Canaan to you as your inherited portion. And that was the way in which this covenant would be fulfilled, by giving them something. And the something they were going to be given was to be this land promised to them. It was also going to be protection and guidance and blessing and everything they needed. Now, verse 12 all the way down to 41 is a focus and a step-by-step reminder of what was done in that time period. He goes all the way back to Abraham, and I'll just pick a couple so you can remember kind of what. And so we're looking at the nation of Israel here and their history. Verse 14, he causes grass to... That's the song. Wrong one, sorry. Different page. When they were, this is verse 12, when they were few in number, very few indeed, and residents and aliens in Canaan, wandering from nation to nation, from one kingdom to another, he allowed no one to oppress them. Verse 16, he called down famine against the land and destroyed the entire food supply. He had sent a man ahead of them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. And so he makes the next references to Joseph and how Joseph was sent into slavery into Egypt. But then Joseph wound up being the one. I'm actually reading this day by day now in my daily stuff. I'm reading through Genesis, and I like that story anyway. So I'm at the place where Joseph's brothers have come with little Benjamin, their brother, to get food again, if you remember that story. But Joseph was put in slavery to begin with, and before long he was the one that was the second in command to Pharaoh, and he wound up saving all the nations because of the famine. He saved food away for a time when there would be this big famine. Then it says, go on down, verse 23, then Israel went, we're talking about Jacob, he went to Egypt. Jacob lived as an alien in the land of Ham. You remember Ham? Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. This one of Noah's sons. The Lord made his people very fruitful. He made them more numerous than their foes. Go on down, and he talks about how they were in slavery for all those years after Pharaoh died, and all of a sudden the Israelites went from being guests to being slaves. But then talks about in verse 37, he brought Israel out, the silver and gold. No one among his tribes stumbled. Now notice he says Israel. Now Israel and Jacob are the same person, but when we get to this place in verse 37, it's no longer Israel the person, it's Israel the nation. He brings Israel out with silver and gold. No one among his tribes stumbled. Egypt was glad when they left. You remember when they left? The Egyptians were like, take all the gold, take all the silver, just get out of here. We're tired of all these plagues. We can't take them anymore. And so they leave. And then he talks about, in verse 39, he spread a cloud as a covering and gave a fire to light it up at night. They asked, and he brought quail and satisfied them with bread from heaven. He opened the rock, and water gushed out. It flowed like a stream in the desert. So he spends that section of verses reminding the people, reminding us of where that nation came from and how through all those years, 400 of them, that they were in slavery, that God still stuck with them, and when it was time to deliver them, he made a way for them to survive. When they get out in the wilderness, we don't know what that's like, but go in the wilderness, y'all probably seen them shows like Survivor and things like that where they have to fend for themselves. And they're there in the wilderness, and nothing but God provided food for them and water, and kept them all safe. So all of that to get to verse 42. For he remembered his holy promise to Abraham his servant. Now you think about how many hundreds of years have passed since that covenant he made with Abraham to where David is writing about now, and he just stopped when they're delivered from Egyptian slavery. You got hundreds and hundreds of years, but God has stayed with those people and never failed to be with them and to lead them and to keep them all intact. Because Moses left, he didn't leave with 50. I mean, there was hundreds of thousands of them that God led out. They're all a nation, just as he said to Abraham they would be. And then verse 43, he brought his people out with rejoicing, his chosen ones with shouts of joy. He gave the lands of the nations, and they inherited what other peoples had worked for. What's this talking about? When they leave Egypt and they wander in the wilderness all those years, remember the 40 years, they wander around, and then it's time for them to go, and Joshua was the one that will lead them, and they go, and they have to march and conquer nation after nation. And this is part of the Bible where some people go, how is this right? Because God is conquering these nations and just wiping those nations out so that this little group of Israelites can go have what God promised them. This is not fair to all these other people. And I heard something very good about this, that I think anyway, a few years ago, and it stuck with me. And it's, while Egypt had all those Israelites in slavery and bondage for 400 and something years, all of those nations had an opportunity to come to God, and none of them did. And so when it came time for God to release his people and say, it's your turn, God said, use your last shot. And they turned it down. They all rejected God. They were all pagan nations. And they all wanted to kill the Israelites. And so that's why I believe that that happened. And so this is another example to us that God is a merciful and gracious God, but he's also a just God. And he'll tolerate only so much. The same blessing that came to those Israelites could have been theirs had they just obeyed his word, but they didn't do it. They all had false idols and false gods, and so there it is. It said they gave them the lands of the nations, and they inherited what other people had worked for. Verse 45, all this happened so that they might keep his statutes and obey his instructions. Hallelujah. All right, so just a few little side notes. While his people might forget his covenant, God never does. He's always faithful to them, even when they are faithless towards him. There were many times when the Israelites strayed away from God. And God said, okay, that's how you want to be, go ahead. And they got conquered a little while. And then they cried out to God, and then he brought them back. In the kids' class today, they're learning about Gideon and how for 7 years the Israelites had betrayed God. And for 7 years they had been trampled on by surrounding nations. And until they cried out to God, they were in that state. But the minute they did, all of a sudden Gideon was called, and God whittled it down from 30-something thousand men to 300 men to be able to fight, only for one reason, so he could prove to all of them that he was the one that did it. And they never even fired a shot. They blew their horns, and all the guys on the other team started killing themselves in confusion. And Gideon never had to do anything except have faith in God, and all of a sudden they were restored with God again. They were able to see what God had done for them once they cried out to him. All right, historical reference to the Exodus from Egypt, what we saw when we were reading about his leading them out. Canaan is that land of the nations that we referred to. God fulfilled his promise of providing a land for his people. He also used them to punish the pagan nations living in that region. That's what we just discussed a little bit. But then let's spend some time on that last part. All this happened so that they might keep his statutes and obey his instructions. Verse 45 refers to this covenant. And it says that the covenant was established for this reason: a blessing and a reward in return for obedience and loyalty. That whole thing called Hesed that we said a minute ago, that covenant has conditions on it. It's the same thing I have with my kids. When I say, look, I love you, you're my child, you have a home here. I will always be here to take care of you and provide what you need. But you don't get to do it your way. I'm the dad. And these are the rules of the house. And as long as you follow the rules of the house, the blessings keep flowing. And the rewards keep coming. And my love keeps showing up. But when you disrespect me, disobey me, go against my ways, reject me, and try to do something your way, I'm going to back up. I'm going to cut off the blessings, and you can find out your hard way, your mistakes. And to me, that's as good a way for me to understand this whole thing with the covenant with God's blessing and curse. And I've referenced that a lot in here, I know. But that's the thing that God said to those people. Said, if you, long as you obey me, respect me, follow my ways, I'm going to bless you. If you don't, I'm going to be forced to curse you. Not that he wants to. What parent wants to punish their kid? You don't. That's the hard. That's the not fun part. The blessing part is fun because you see them happy and smiling. And I think that's the way God is with us. So that statement I just made, the covenant was established as a blessing and reward for obedience and loyalty. They're all signs of love and commitment to each other. So we got 3 sections in our study today. First one, call to worship, verses 1 through 6. The psalmist calls on the people to worship God and to share him with others. And it also seeks for us we're also to seek God continually and remember his goodness. And in the second section there, verses 7 through 11, there was a covenant that was made, and praise God. We're supposed to recognize it, the wonderful covenant of blessing that he made with his people. That relationship of love and deep commitment. And in the last section that we studied, 42 and 45, God fulfilled his promises to his people. He freed them. He led them to a land that was promised to them. Now, the cycle I was telling you about a few minutes ago, I'll hit it right here, is that we see obedience leads to blessing. Blessing leads to gratitude and love. And then gratitude and love leads to more obedience. And it's just a big cycle with God. I obey him, he blesses me. He blesses me and I recognize it. And I'm thankful for it. And I love him for it. And so what do? I obey even more. And that's the life, I think, of a Christian, is recognizing what God's done for us and that we owe him something in return. And he doesn't really want anything except for us to love him and give him ourselves. He doesn't really ask for anything else from us, does he? Just give me you. And I think some people struggle with that their whole life. But some figure it out pretty quick. And the people that find it out quick, they have more to enjoy, I think. But no matter what, we want to draw people to be able to get to that place. And then the last thing for us is knowing that it didn't just stop there. And that God made another promise, because that Abraham covenant led to another covenant with David. They call it the Davidic covenant. But it's another covenant with him that says there's going to be a king that comes later, and it's going to come from your line. And so if those of you that know your history back to Abraham and even back to Adam, but we'll start with Abraham. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had his 12 sons, and one of those sons' name was Judah. And then Judah's descendants led to David, and then David led to Jesus Christ. In my story, I'm reading about the 12 sons going back to Egypt. There's a portion in there where somebody is asked to give themselves up in return for the son. Guess which one it was? Judah. Judah was the one that said, I'll stay here in this place. And it made me think about, well, how about that? From the line of Judah comes Jesus Christ, somebody who would stand in for somebody else. And so the promises made in the Old Testament about that person that would come later is Jesus Christ. And then, of course, hundreds of years after that, sure enough, there he is, Jesus Christ. And all these stories just fit together like this huge puzzle, but continually show us day after day, verse after verse, book after book in the Bible, just how God says he's going to make a promise, he makes it, he sticks with it, and he never lets it down. He always is faithful to us to take care of what we need. You know, you can be without something. I need this, I could really use that, but in the end, when you just boil it out and you say, God really is faithful to me. He everything that I need, he's already supplying it. Sometimes you look and go, you know, I could do without a whole lot of this stuff I have. If I have to, that's fine with me. I just don't want to do without him. That's the one thing I can't do without. Don't take my Bible, don't take my prayer, don't take my relationship. Those are the things that we realize we need the most. Last thing about this covenant. The writer had this in here, and he put it better than I could, so I'm going to read it. Psalm 105, 12 through 45 recounts the ways God protected and provided for Israel through the wilderness to the promised land. He remembered his covenant with Abraham, and he was faithful to do everything he had promised. As a result, the people rejoiced and praised him for his faithfulness. And the psalmist concluded by emphasizing that God's people should keep his statutes and obey his instructions in response to his faithfulness to them. And so that's a summary there of what we just talked about, how that God is so faithful to us that we owe him gratitude. We owe him thankfulness. We owe him worship and praise. And we don't just owe him a little bit of it. We owe him all of it. Everything we are, we recognize it comes from him, and that we can't do any of it without him. And so, challenge, I think, from that psalm was just to remember all the ways that because he's so faithful, he just deserves our worship. And constantly trying to remind ourselves of that. It's easy in a nation as prosperous as ours, for us as a nation especially, but even individuals, to start patting ourselves on the back. Think, well, we really got it going on. You know, we don't have this problem, that problem like these other countries do, and other people do, whatever. But always trying to recognize that it didn't start with us. It started with him first. So, questions, comments, anything that you have, something you thought I would like to share, whatever. We got a minute or two.
One of the things that, in looking at this lesson, I heard Ann Graham Lotz at a seminar many years ago, and she said, you know, if the Lord never does another thing for me except save my soul,
Yeah.
I am blessed beyond measure and shouldn't expect anything else from him, but he gives me love, grace, mercy. There's no way to count it all.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you think about that. That's all he has to do. But then, just like we would like to be told we're loved and thought of and encouraged, he does that for us all the time.
That's right. Yep. Anybody else? This is one of the more popular psalms, I guess you'd say. You start hearing different ones that you'll recognize, Psalm 23, different ones. But this one sort of sticks out for a whole lot of people because it is such, it's got such a big, broad picture in it. And so it's good for us to study. Glad we did. Let's have prayers, Lee. Perry, don't pray for us.